I'm Tim Sweeney, architect here in Reno.
And you live here in the Windy Hill area?
That's right, yes. I was told by the fire chief that responded here that at one time they thought that they were not even going to try to save it, but then a couple of things were realized. One is a stucco home. It has a concrete tile roof, and if it had a shake roof, they said they probably would not have even tried to save it. In fact, I understand that all of the homes that burned completely down had shake roofs. However, on mine, they were able to fight it and win it, and of course we're really grateful and thankful.
And regardless of your tile roof, you still had some embers penetrate through.
Yes, in those winds, the 70-mile-an-hour winds, it was like a blowtorch, and the embers were blowing from the south and actually from the west. It was a swirling kind of action, and it succeeded in getting underneath the tiles that run up and down the hips where the roof turns the corners. And those tiles, when they overlap, there's a small gap underneath them that will allow an ember or debris to get underneath. And I think the combination of the winds and the embers continuing to be stoked, and perhaps some pine needles, all contributed to feeding the fire that was able to get underneath to a spot where it could build up, eventually get into this space that is like an attic, but it's primarily duct space, and concentrate and burn through the plywood on the roof and get into the structure. So we have structural damage, but again, nothing compared to what other people had. We're really fortunate and thankful to the firefighters for deciding that this was worth saving. Even though I designed the home to be relatively fireproof, I did make one fatal flaw. I did not have a defensible space that was adequate. The vegetation that was in this area primarily was natural, but then we came in with a juniper, which turns out exactly a wrong mistake, and that allowed, with the vegetation, for the fire to attack not only the leaf droppings that were in this area, but the highly volatile plants, and get right up next to the house. Now, luckily, the stucco has fared pretty well, just a little bit of discoloring, but it could be structurally having to be replaced. This is really the place where the fire got closest, and the redwood deck, of course, was singed, especially right up on the top where the flames were highest, right at this corner. I luckily had the foresight to stucco underneath the deck, and that did not catch any flames and stopped that from occurring. But the redwood actually, I think, fared pretty well considering what the fire was doing at the time.
And so now knowing this, any changes that you might make in the future?
Well, that's the thing about architecture and life in general. It's a series of lessons, and technology improves. I think I will probably stay with the same approach and just repair what needs to be repaired. I'm going to look at some synthetic decking and see if it is fireproof. I may learn that it's not suitable, but at least it's a little more maintenance free. We'll see what that ends up being. All in all, I think it was well constructed and served the purpose, with the exception of the landscaping. It wasn't quite where it should have been.
And do you plan to address the landscaping in the future?
Oh, definitely, yeah. That's a mistake that won't happen again.
When you put that roof on, you had done that with wildfire in mind.
Yes, I'm a native Nevadan, and I understand fires are a natural process and very common, especially when you're in sagebrush area and all the cheatgrass and all the flammables that tend to be around us. And the landscaping over here worked just fine. It was a nice big cushion of lawn to keep the fire away, but as we got downhill, that is where it became just too difficult, at least with what we could do at the time, to do anything other than go with the native materials. And if we had had maybe another 10 feet of lawn area, we might be in a whole different situation than we are now, but that just wasn't in the cards at the time. And so the stucco, the concrete roof tile, the metal trim, that's all designed to be resistant to fire, and it performed. It just that the wind-driven embers were really the problem in this situation, and how they were able to find a way into the combustible areas and do the damage. And now, even though the home is still there, it's structurally unsafe, and we are now no longer living in the home and working with the insurance company to get it repaired.